He's been nursing that one coffee for 2 hours, taking up a prime table. Get him out. We need customers who actually spend money, not relics. The manager's voice, slick with disdain, cut through the quiet afternoon lull of the roadside diner. A few of the younger staff shared a nervous glance, a silent complicity in the disrespect. But the young waitress, Anna, simply nodded, her expression unreadable. Her focus was not on the manager's petty tyranny, but on the old man sitting alone by the window, his gaze lost somewhere in the fields beyond the glass. She saw the tremor in his hand as he lifted the cup, the worn creases on his leather vest, the faded stitching of a unit patch that most people wouldn't recognize. The manager saw a liability, she saw a legacy. And as a low, distant rumble began to vibrate through the floorboards, a sound like gathering thunder on a clear day, she felt a shift in the air, a premonition that a debt of honor was about to be called due. If you believe that quiet respect speaks louder than arrogant words, type "legacy" in the comments below. The manager, Mr. Harrison, continued his tirade, his voice a grating metronome of commercialism against the sacred silence of the old veteran's contemplation. "Look at him," Harrison sneered, gesturing with a pen. "He probably doesn't have 2 dimes to rub together. This is a business, not a charity ward." Anna ignored him, moving with an economy of motion that was its own form of quiet protest. She wiped down her counters with methodical precision, her hands steady, her movements practiced and deliberate. Each circular swipe of the cloth was a rejection of the chaos Harrison tried to sow. She refilled salt shakers, aligned ketchup bottles, and checked on her other tables, her calm a stark contrast to her boss's agitated pacing. Her silence wasn't submission, it was a fortress. She kept the old man in her periphery, noting how he never complained, never asked for anything, simply existed in a state of quiet dignity that Harrison, in his frantic pursuit of profit, could never comprehend. It was a dignity forged in places Harrison couldn't imagine, a stillness earned through storms he would never weather. And in that stillness, Anna recognized a strength that needed no announcement. When the old man finally rose, leaving a few wrinkled dollars on the table, Anna intercepted him before Harrison could. She gave the manager a look that was not defiant, but simply final. Walking to the register, she took out her own wallet. She rang up the coffee and a slice of pie she'd given the man on the house. The total was small, insignificant to the diner's bottom line but monumental in its symbolism. She paid the bill herself, placing the receipt marked "paid" on the spindle with a quiet click that seemed to echo in the tense room. She caught the old man's eye as he headed for the door. He didn't speak. He didn't need to. He simply gave her a slow, deliberate nod, a gesture of immense gratitude and shared understanding that passed between them like a secret handshake. Then he was gone, the little bell on the door announcing his departure. Harrison stormed over, his face flushed with rage. "What do you think you're doing? Undermining my authority? Wasting your money on him?" Before Anna could answer, the rumble returned. This time, it wasn't distant. It was a physical presence, a deep, guttural roar that shook the windows in their frames and made the coffee mugs dance on their hooks. Harrison's angry words were swallowed by the escalating thunder. It grew from 1 engine to 10, then 20, then an entire symphony of internal combustion that seemed to shake the very foundations of the building. The sound was not chaotic, it was controlled, a disciplined crescendo of power. Patrons abandoned their meals, rushing to the windows to see the source of the commotion. The street outside, once empty, was now a river of chrome and steel. Dozens of motorcycles, immaculate and imposing, were pulling up, forming a perfect, disciplined cordon around the diner. They moved with the precision of a cavalry unit, blocking every entrance and exit, their engines idling in a unified, intimidating hum. The air grew thick with the smell of exhaust and the weight of unspoken purpose. Harrison stood frozen, his face a mask of confusion and fear. The arrogance had evaporated, replaced by the primal anxiety of a man who has lost control and doesn't know why. The world he understood, of profit margins and customer turnover, had just been invaded by a world of leather, loyalty, and a code he could not begin to decipher. A profound silence fell as 80 engines cut out in perfect unison. The sudden absence of noise was more deafening than the roar that preceded it. In this vacuum, the diner door opened, the bell a tiny, insignificant chime in the face of the immense presence that filled the doorway. A man who seemed carved from granite and old leather stepped inside, his vest adorned with the same patch the old veteran had worn. He was flanked by two others of similar stature, their eyes sweeping the room with a calm, analytical gaze. They were not looking for a fight, they were there for a reckoning. The lead writer's eyes, deep-set and serious, found Harrison cowering behind the counter. He didn't raise his voice. He didn't have to. His authority was absolute, radiating from him in waves. "We're told someone in this establishment paid a bill for Sergeant Major Callahan," he said, his voice a low gravelly baritone. Harrison, eager to shift blame, immediately pointed a trembling finger at Anna. "She did. It was her. I told her not to, that he was just loitering." The lead writer's gaze shifted to Anna. There was no menace in it, only a deep, penetrating curiosity. He walked toward her, his boots heavy on the linoleum floor. He stopped before her, dwarfing her small frame, and looked at her, truly looked at her, with an intensity that made the rest of the world fall away. The writer held her gaze for a long moment, then a slow smile touched the corners of his mouth. "The sergeant major doesn't forget," he said, his voice softening. "He's the man who founded our chapter. He pulled most of the men outside out of hellholes you only see in movies. He taught us that loyalty isn't a word, it's an action. He said a young woman here showed him a kindness he hadn't seen in a long time. He said she treated him like a man, not a ghost." He turned his head slightly, his voice rising just enough for the entire room to hear. "Sergeant Major Callahan is a living legend. He holds more medals for valor than most entire platoons. That coffee you covered, ma'am." He looked directly at Anna. "That was for a hero. And his family has come to pay you back." He gestured to the door, and one by one, the bikers began to file in. They didn't speak. They moved with a quiet purpose, filling every empty seat, standing along the walls, their presence transforming the cheap diner into something sacred, a hall of honor. Each man who passed Anna looked her in the eye and gave a subtle nod, the same gesture the sergeant major had used. It was a salute. They took up every table, including the one Harrison had been so desperate to free up. They ordered food, lots of it. Coffee, steaks, pies, everything the kitchen could produce. They were polite, their voices low, their manners impeccable. But their message was unmistakable. They were supporting the one person who had shown a modicum of human decency, and in doing so, they were passing judgment on the man who had shown none. Harrison stood by the register, utterly broken, forced to ring up an endless stream of orders, his profits soaring because of the very person he had just tried to cast out. The irony was a crushing weight. He had worshipped at the altar of money, and now he was being force-fed his sacrament by a tribe that operated on a currency of respect he couldn't comprehend. His authority was gone, his arrogance shattered into a million pieces. He was a ghost in his own establishment, a silent witness to a quiet revolution started by a single cup of coffee. The story of that day became a local legend, passed down in hushed, reverent tones. They called it, the Day of the Writers. It was said that Anna's Diner became a landmark, a must-visit destination for veterans and bikers crossing the country. They didn't come for the food, which was good, but for the principle it represented. They came to sit at the table by the window, now unofficially known as the Sergeant Major's table. Mr. Harrison was gone within a week, unable to bear the silent judgment of the community and the newfound, unshakable authority of his quietest employee. He faded into obscurity, a forgotten footnote in a story that was now about honor and legacy. Anna, however, thrived. She became the soul of the place, her quiet competence now recognized as the profound strength it had always been. She never spoke of that day unless asked, and even then, her words were few. She simply continued her work, treating every customer, from the richest tourist to the poorest traveler, with the same unwavering dignity. A few years later, with a loan co-signed by the local writers' club, Anna bought the diner. The first thing she did was hang a framed photograph behind the counter. It wasn't of a celebrity or a landscape, it was a black and white photo of a young, steely-eyed soldier, his uniform crisp, his gaze fixed on a distant horizon. Underneath it, a small brass plaque read, SGM Michael Callahan. Welcome home. The diner was no longer just a business, it was a sanctuary. It stood as a testament to a simple, powerful truth, that you can judge the character of a person not by how they treat their equals, but by how they treat those the world has told them they can afford to forget. The legacy of that single act of kindness echoed far beyond the walls of the small building, proving that true strength isn't found in the volume of your voice, but in the quiet integrity of your actions. It taught an entire town that respect is not a transaction, it is a moral imperative, and sometimes, the smallest gesture of honor can summon an army to defend it. For more stories where quiet integrity triumphs over loud arrogance and where a person's character defines their worth, subscribe to Unknown Heroine Stories.